Hey friends, welcome back to the NeuroSpicy MomPod, the cozy sensory safe corner of the internet where we normalize neurodivergence, unmasking, and all the ways we can rebuild our lives with more compassion and fewer shoulds. Today, I am so excited because we have a very special guest, someone whose work I admire deeply and who has supported so many people in the neurodivergent community with science-backed compassion and lived experience wisdom. Kory Andreas is a clinician, an educator, and autistic advocate, creating spaces for unmasking, adventure, joy, and nervous system-centered healing. Kory, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So let's just jump right back into it because I can't wait to dig into your brain. Um, a lot of our listeners are themselves late diagnosed or still exploring their neurotype. So I would just love to start there. And your late diagnosed story resonates with me so much as another late in life diagnosed adult, and it intersects deeply with your work as a clinician. So, can you share what it was like to recognize your own autism while actively supporting autistic clients?
Oh my gosh, such a story. Yes, so much like you, I worked in the schools and I had all this background, mostly with autistic boys. So a lot of my caseload were kiddos that had IEPs and 504s, and then just the kiddos who needed help and support. So I was very used to having a active lunch bunch during the day and a bunch of kiddos that just seemed to gravitate towards me for no explainable reason. But later in life, when my own kiddo was diagnosed at I think we started the process probably around 2 or 3, just kind of trying to figure out what was going on, but she wasn't diagnosed until she was about 6. I was just blown away because I really considered myself to be pretty in the know of the world of autism and really a big advocate, and just really was shocked
Mhm.
at so much of what I was seeing with her. So that became the beginning of just understanding autism in girls, specifically my kiddo. And then for years and years, I still continued to work with teens. And then when I started to go into private practice, I wanted to explore the world of couples and adults, and was just really needing a change because I was so burned out on the things that were happening in schools.
Yeah.
So I started working with adults and I started assessing, and I'm doing all these assessments, and I'm just finding myself going, that sounds like what my thoughts are. Like, that's really weird. I didn't know anybody else thought like that. And it was typically, the women I was assessing, the gender diverse clients I was assessing, and then the male clients I was assessing, it was kind of like, no, I don't relate to that at all. But everything else, yeah, that feels really, really personal and familiar. So there were a couple of pivotal moments where I just remember going, okay, control your face. Like, don't freak out, because just hearing other people's inside thoughts were so just eye opening to me. And then I just felt like I needed to take like a whole new deep dive into understanding women and gender diverse clients, and just the experiences of high masking autistic
Mhm.
adults. And it was just like starting all over from the beginning. We weren't trained about these things. So I had this like big epiphany where I was recently in like a blended family where we were like co-parenting, and this is the first time I hadn't lived alone with my own kids in 8 years. And
Oh.
soon to be husband was like, what's going on with you? Like, what's happening? And it was interesting because I think a lot of the traits, much like many people who are late diagnosed, we write off the context for
Mhm.
some other reason. So when I
Yeah.
was stressed and scattered and wanted to be alone and didn't want to engage in all the things people my age were doing when I was a single mom, I was like, wow, I'm a single mom. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So when I wasn't exhausted anymore and I had help and I had a partner and I had systems and a great, great thing going, I was really struggling more than I ever had in the past. And it was weird to have someone there to reflect that back to me and go,
Yeah.
what's going on with you? So to me, like, I kind of felt like I got really autistic all of a sudden. Like, that's kind of how it
Yeah.
felt. It's just like,
Yes.
why can I not do anything that I used to do so effortlessly? And that was the beginning of going, okay, I need to check in with somebody because this is not working. And
That is so real. And let's just normalize that at the top. Like, I had the same regression where I've been out of teaching now for this was my first beginning of the school year where I wasn't a teacher. And I'm like, gosh, do I want to go back? And if I'm truly honest with myself and my nervous system, I can't. I've really lost a lot of what I would consider like, oh, I used to be able to do that. I lost my ability. But really, what has happened is I've become so aware of my nervous system,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I'm almost, like, unwilling to put myself back
Completely.
in that kind of strain. So, like,
Completely.
can you talk to that when you are working with late in life adults specifically? Because, with children, we'll see a regression a little bit, but in my experience, once they receive the support, poof, you would just see this change in them where suddenly they understood themselves. But with adults, you hear the opposite, that, like,
Yes.
"I used to be able to do so much and now I can't." Can you speak to that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, because we're masking our faces off. I mean, to go into a school, I look back now, I used to tell myself, like, oh, I can't stand that guidance counselor. She always just drops kids off. She's so lazy. She's so rude. She's so this. And now looking back, I'm like, was she? Probably not. I mean, maybe she wasn't my favorite person, but what I really hated is somebody dropping a kid in my office unexpectedly. I love working with
Yes.
kids. I loved working with that kid. But at that moment, it was like, why? Why do you have to do this? And now that my schedule is predictable and comfortable and there's a dog at my feet all day and I'm wearing comfortable clothes and I'm sitting in the same spot every day and eating the same snacks, at the same times every day. You fall into this rhythm and you realize like going back to something else would feel impossible at this point. I mean, I
Yes.
just don't even think I could do it. But in the beginning, before I knew, I'm preaching all day to people about, accept yourself, like accommodate yourself. And then I was not accommodating myself. So,
Yes.
a day of, like, a sporting event that goes on for 12 hours in a gym in fluorescent
Mm.
lighting, like, I would go home and be like, "Oh, what's wrong with me? I'm a terrible mom. I hate this." And,
Yeah.
looking back, I'm like, "No, my body hates this. My my brain wants to be sitting right here with my kid." So, it almost feels like once you get a taste of unmasking and you feel what it could be like to not just do things because you feel like you should, I feel like the idea of going back to the way it used to be feels completely impossible to so many people.
And irresponsible almost. Like, I don't wanna go back to that mom who was just, like, hanging on by a thread, just
Yes.
like, "Ooh." And what you said, I think that so much of that comes from the context. Like, I went into teaching because I wanted to ensure that children understood that they were loved no matter what, like, I went into teaching because I
As
loved
is.
children,
Yeah.
but what I didn't understand was the context of teaching. "Girl, you're gonna be interrupted every 2 seconds. Can you
Yes.
handle that?"
No.
Or like a sudden change in schedule. Does my autistic brain handle that well? No. So
Absolutely
it
not.
was, but how did I perceive that? I'm a bad teacher.
Yes.
I'm not cut out for this. My superintendent was right. Not everyone was meant to be teachers. But then it would follow up with the thought, but like, but if the neurodivergent person is taken out of the context, how can that neurodivergent student be supported? That kid's actually not being defiant. He just needs a couple seconds for his brain to switch tasks. Like, can you do that for him?
Percent. And now seeing that with myself, I had this epiphany last year. I was presenting at a huge conference and probably one of the biggest professional moments I had had so far. And I was so proud of the work I was doing. I was so just connected with the material and really felt like it was one of those moments where I could actually be proud of myself. And I like afterwards, I give the presentation and I walk out and within like the next hour, it was like a crushing wave of just chaos just overcame my body. Like it was so physical and visceral and uncomfortable. And I remember thinking, what is happening to me? Because I hadn't been in a school in probably 5 years. I've been working here and accommodating myself. And just the idea of being in a hotel that I wanted to be in, for five
Yeah.
days with like, and I had brought safe foods, I had comfy clothes, I had everything planned. I did every possible thing I could do. But, day 3, day 4, it doesn't matter anymore. Like you're
Mm-mm.
not home, you don't have your schedule. And I remember just thinking, like, after my presentation was done, I've never felt more autistic. Like, I felt like I couldn't get anything together. My husband would call and be like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "I just need to go home." And he's like,
Yeah.
You've been training for this your whole life. What do you mean?" And I'm like, "I miss my dog. Like, I can't eat this food. I'm so tired." And it was wild. And it was really a moment where I think I needed that to happen because I don't know if you relate to this, but sometimes we can fool ourselves. I'm so accommodated. I feel like I have it together and, sometimes when I hear other people's stories, I'm like, "Oh, I can't relate to that. I could do that. And then you realize like, no, none of us are above this. Like you
Yeah.
can't power through. We are all victims of our nervous system. So it was a
Yes.
really eye-opening moment for me to realize that accommodations like only go so far.
And it's like, I feel like that's the battle we're fighting is that knowledge of like, listen, our brain's gonna brain. Like, we cannot change the way our brain is. All we can do is change the environment. Like, that's
True.
all we can do.
Yeah.
But especially for girls, because the moment I thought I knew about autism, I thought I knew like, hey, this child needs to be diagnosed. Let's get that one in SBIT. But they were always boys. And the
Yeah.
way I had to fight for little girls.
Yes.
Like, listen, yes, I know she can read. I know that's but socializing is a skill too.
Yeah.
Being able to regulate is a skill too. And we just in our society, I feel like we haven't caught up to the fact that we can't learn if our nervous system is dysregulated and school is not a regulating area. I can't even
No.
imagine going back as an adult and let
No.
alone my children. Like,
No, and we make so many excuses for context. Like, when people I remember one girl that we were at an IEP and I'm just fighting for this kiddo and she was crying because they were talking about doing critiques in her art class and she was an incredibly gifted artist and people would be so offended by how blunt she was. And she had no problems making friends. She had no problems doing the typical things, but the teachers kept telling her she was rude. And she's like, "Wait, you told me to tell them what is wrong with their art. So like I am telling them what is wrong with the art in my
yeah.
opinion. And if they get their feelings hurt, then they shouldn't be in this kind of school." And she was just so matter of fact. And everybody in the room just kind of was like trying to school her on being rude. And I was like, hold on a second. And then in talking to her privately, she was like, she had no idea that it was coming across that way. And she was like, I don't understand. Like, how do you nicely tell someone, like, you asked me to identify the problem? I identified it. I communicated it. Why is that rude? It's like little subtle things like that where you're like, this poor kid is just being, who wants to be told they're rude all day when they're just doing
Oh
what they
my.
were asked to do?
Well, and like how much do we tone police girls? Like constantly. And so it's like then and that's growing up. So now it's like you go into a workplace and you have to speak up and you're just like,
Saying,
"Oh, I don't want to say the wrong way."
yeah,
How long do I spend on an email?
yeah. Oh, all the time.
Do you
Absolutely.
feel like once that you had that moment and it kind of clicked like, "Oh, my brain is the way that it is. There's nothing I can change or train to switch the way that my nervous system is." Did that change the way that you approach therapy or even assessing your clients?
Gosh, yeah, so much. And I think every day I get a little further down the road of just thinking more about nervous system and body stuff and less about everything I learned in school, which was feelings and talk therapy and all that stuff, which is, obviously still what I do. But we end up talking so much more about overwhelm and fight and flight and, just icky feelings in our body that we can't really describe to people. So it's completely changed what I do. And it's almost embarrassing at times because I think back to how many years and decades of therapy where I was told I was so anxious and, all of the like body image issues and things like that where people like don't understand what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
if you say to somebody like I'm really uncomfortable with the way that my body feels when I gain weight and they immediately go eating disorder and I'm like no, actually like I physically feel really icky when things
Mhm.
are moving in my body in a way, or like I'm really anxious. I never identified with that word anxious the way that people described it. Like it never felt like it fit for me. And not
No.
to say that I'm not, I'm incredibly anxious, but it never really quite described the feeling in my body.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know. Like I'm not sitting around worrying about every scenario. I'm just really physically uncomfortable all the time.
I was hit with depression. There was
Mm,
always like, "Oh, you're depressed," because I have a lot of childhood trauma too. So it was always,
yeah.
"Oh, it's the trauma. Oh, it's the depression." But like you said, it never fit. Like, because it's like, but I could be very interested in something and then I'm not depressed.
Yes.
Like
That
all like
pulls you
that this
out. Yeah.
yeah. Or like the eating disorder, like it's disordered eating. I actually just don't like texture. Like
Right.
it was a texture issue,
Right.
but people thought it was an eating and RSD, like not being able to take criticism, like, "Oh, you just need to be humble," all this stuff. No, it's rejection sensitivity dysphoria, like it's just like it's almost like you put on glasses. I remember I got glasses in 4th grade and I was like, "You can see the leaves?" Like,
Yeah.
"What?" And I
100%.
think that it almost changes nothing but everything at the exact same time.
It is true, and think about your self-esteem. I mean, I think about this all the time. The things that people said when I was a kid, and I wouldn't, I don't know, I wouldn't say I had this horrific childhood. There was definitely some stuff going on, but it's almost worse to think of the little, like, micro things that people said, like, "Oh, she never stops talking." And I'm like, "'Cause no one ever understands me." Like, I have to
Mhm.
over-explain, and why is no one as interested about things as I am? And
Yeah.
why are people not reading self-help books in high school? Like, I just found myself so confused all the time by what other people were doing and
Or
why
like,
was I so weird?
why are you taking me asking for clarification as being argumentative? I don't
Yes.
understand what you mean. There's 7 different
No.
ways that we can go on this conversation, you know?
Yes, and then you think you're broken at the end of it, and even
Yes.
just, like, you mentioned the rejection sensitivity, like, I remember going in for, like, these meetings with bosses working in the schools and them saying things where I would be like, "That's just so not true what you're saying," like, and they'd be like, "It's really important to be able to take feedback," and I remember thinking, like, feedback that's accurate, but, like,
Yeah.
you've never sat in my sessions with kids, you don't know about the work that I do, like, you don't know the techniques I'm using, and you're gonna come in here once a year and comment, like, "Do you talk to the kids I work with? Do you look at my work? Like, what are you basing this off of?" And
Oh
so
my
that getting
gosh.
categorized as, like, a has trouble with feedback. No, has trouble with made up feedback.
Are you watching my mind being blown right now? Because
Right?
you just blew my mind because when people would compliment me as a teacher, or even my principal, she'd have to give me, like, a review, but she never came into my classroom. That was my I'm like, "That's how would you know? You've never seen," my mom's like, "You're such a good teacher." I'm like, "How would you know?" And then she would say, "I just can't take a compliment." But in my brain, I'm like, "You've literally never seen
You
me
don't know.
teach."
Yes.
Is that the autism? What is that?
Oh, 100%. The compliments are so tricky. And then, and I'm thinking to myself, like, you want to compliment me for something? Like, compliment me for not jumping across the table when somebody said, "Oh, you think everyone's autistic." I'm like, I mean, compliment me for the things I'm actually working really hard on. So
Right?
that never happened. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. You really just blew my mind because I thought that that was just me being insecure.
No,
But I really did need, like, it I cannot accept, like, generalities of compliments. It's like, but you don't know." Like, "What do you
no, but
mean?" That's so funny.
no, and there's like the opposite of the rejection sensitivity is this like response recognition euphoria that never gets talked about. And I feel
I've
like it's
never heard that. Can you
oh,
explain what that is?
yes, yes.
Okay,
So
what is it called again?
I think it's response or responsive recognition euphoria. I hope I'm getting that right. But basically, it's the direct opposite of RSD. So instead of, feeling terrible about feedback that's hard to hear, it's like feeling incredible and euphoric about feedback that lands. So if someone were to say, "Wow, I could listen to you talk about autism all day. You know so many things." I'd be like, "Oh, really? Thank you. It's all I read about. It's all I think about." And it's like when a compliment lands and it's sort of like, it feels equivalent with the effort you've put in or like how important it is to you. So if someone's like, "Your eyes are pretty," I'm like, "Thanks. Like, that's cool." But like, not really the compliment I'm looking to get. But if someone's like, "Wow, you really like put your heart and soul into that presentation." And I walked away feeling like everything is different. I'm like, "Oh my God, I could just sit in this moment forever. Thank you for
Yes.
seeing me." So we don't talk about that. It's like autistic joy. We just don't talk about it.
I mean, I think that's what it is. It's being seen. Like, how
Yes.
maybe we don't talk about it because, like, it's very far
Rare.
and few between that I
Yes.
feel seen, or that, like, oh gosh, when someone asks you about your hyper focus and or
Yes.
like, "Hey, I know you know a lot about this," and you're just like,
I
"Yeah."
sure
Like,
do.
yes, they
Pull the
you see,
chair.
you know what? Let's chat for 5
Yes.
hours.
Oh my God, yes. And
And
then they listen. Yeah, it's
yes,
amazing.
yes, I love that. I love that there's a word for that because as hard as it is to have criticism, we also do experience, I feel like, the opposite end of the spectrum where I think that me and my children are capable of experiencing joy in a way that I don't see in a lot of, like, other people, and it could be something very simple as asking him about, like, his hyper focus for that moment and seeing him light up and lose himself, or just being in nature, and it's like, those are the 2 times when I see my kids are themselves, like,
Yes.
in every aspect of the word, and I'm just so happy we have a word for it because it's very specific to us.
Yes, 100%. There is a book that I read over the summer. I think it was called Autism and Love, and there's a quote in there from a mom who said, "When I found out my kiddo was autistic, I never ever heard a doctor say, saddle up. You are never going to imagine the joy that your kid can experience from like finding a rock or learning about fairies or, going outside and playing in the ocean. I forget what the exact, quote is, but it was basically like, we talk so much about deficits and pathology and diagnosis and drugs and therapies and behaviors. When do we talk about the beauty that is a creative neurodivergent mind? And I feel that so strongly. And it colors everything we do. Like
Yes.
there is something really beautiful about the fact that my brain still all these years later thinks autism is fascinating.
Yes.
There is something magical about every time I get a new coffee cup. Like I love it like a child. Like I'm like, look at her. She's beautiful. She's shiny and beautiful. And
I'm sorry. Can I show off my new pen with the
please,
fidget? Like, who
we
else cares about pens with fidgets? No one.
oh,
Not anyone.
and then it's like you hear these things and people are like, "Oh, you're so wordy, you talk so much, you're so full of yourself." Like we take everything autistic that's beautiful and we color it negatively. And
Yes.
so to recognize like when I read that quote, I just like tears just streamed down my face because I'm like there are so many beautiful things about me that have been squashed my whole life and I'm determined not to do that with our kids.
Oh my God.
And just
That is so beautiful.
oh, right? Like,
That is
and
so beautiful.
I remember my kiddo when she was probably like 2, and I was when I was married to her dad, like, we turned to each other when she was probably like a year and a half or close to 2, and I was like, "We have to get her a dog." Like, I've never seen anything like what's happening here. Like, she would walk
Oh.
up to animals on the street, and I mean, she is, like, on the ground with them, like, covered in slobber, like, didn't care where we were. She would remember a dog's name that we met 4 years ago, and she's like a kindergartner. She's like, "Remember when I was 3 and we were in DC and we saw that dog Rocky?" And I'm like,
No.
"No, but you do." So, it was just, like, so obvious to me immediately that something was going on that was just way beyond anything we understood. And we got our dog immediately. I was like, "We are doing her a disservice by not getting this kid a dog." And it was like I still get tingles thinking about it. It was like the most beautiful relationship I think I'll probably ever experience. Like, her and this dog.
It's like
Just
pure. It's just and I don't remember where I heard it, but I think it's so beautiful that there's a lot of indigenous cultures who view people with autism as like the link between us and nature.
true.
I
Yeah,
feel that so deeply. I didn't know people didn't look at rocks and saw how individually beautiful all of them were. I
yep,
was like, that's a weird thing.
yeah.
What do you mean you don't see the world like that? How much would we miss if we didn't have people who are able to stop and zone in and focus on like this one little
Yes.
beautiful thing?
It's so true. We go to the beach every summer and we go to the same house with the same people. It's like the most autistic vacation ever, but we go
I bet it's so nice.
so nice. We love it. We switched houses once. We were like, "Never again. Let's not do
Never
that."
no. Why did we do that?
But, like, my daughter is, like, predictably, like, walking on the shore, trying to introduce herself to every dog we encounter. "Hi, can I pet your dog? Hi, can I talk to your dog?" My mom
Mm.
is, like, 20 steps ahead, like, not talking to any of us, picking up seashells. We have no idea what she does with these shells. Like, every year, she's just bringing home, like, gallon bags of seashells, and I'm like we, like, tease her about it, but at the same time, I'm like, "I get it."
Yeah,
And
I
then
get it. I
we
totally
out,
get
and I'm
it.
just like, the ocean," like, I'm just so wrapped up in, like, the sounds and the sand and the
Yes.
whole thing. And it's just like you see us, and I'm like, this is actually what people should look like in their native environment.
Yeah.
Like, look
Yes.
at us in the wild, just loving the beach. It's the
Like,
cutest.
deeply connect and
Yeah.
that's the thing what's so funny is that you put them then take those same kids and put them in a classroom,
It's a
in an
nightmare.
artificial and he can't focus, he can't and I'm like, "Let's go to the creek and I will show you focus." He will be yeah, for 2 hours straight, he will be watching an animal building a nest and then try to duplicate it. It's just it's not their environment. There's not the stimuli that they need to be able to focus. And I just think that, like, the more we don't treat people to, like, look past the behavior and look at what the nervous system is saying, our world problem solved. All the problems are solved.
But it's so easy to solve the problem. And that's what
It's
gets
so
me is that
easy.
like I was talking about this a couple weeks ago. My kiddo had a weekend where she was working at the SPCA on like a Friday night and she
Of course she
volunteers
was.
there. And
Of
she was
course she was.
most beautiful thing ever.
Of
Like she will
course.
spend any amount of time there. And then Saturday she was like with me and I hosted a like a neurodivergent get together. We do these like neurodivergent adventures. And it was the first one she came with me
Love
on.
that.
presented a PowerPoint to everybody. We had a PowerPoint party, and she's standing up in a room full of strangers, and she's like, "This is why I will get canceled with cancel culture." All these reasons why she was gonna get canceled that were hilarious. The whole room of adults is cracking up. She's the only
Oh
kid
my
there.
God.
And then Sunday, she goes and she works for like something like 8 hours. And Monday morning, she goes back to school. She's miserable. She's texting me every 10 minutes, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And her teachers were like, she's on her phone all day. She's rude. She's a behavior problem. She's this. And I'm like, no, she's brilliant and she's bored. And this environment is not fun for her. You guys are telling her, throwing directives at her all day. She's PDA. Like, she is not interested in doing what you tell her to
Yeah.
do. And by
Also, you
herself,
don't use manners. They notice that.
never,
No one's using
never.
please.
Never, never, and then they'll, like, put her at a table by herself. They'll be like, "Oh, she's such a behavior," and it's just it's wild to me because I'm like, it's so sad that you don't actually get to know the delightful human that is my kid because she would work so damn hard for you if you got to know her, you know?
1,000%. Also, you'll
Yep.
never find a funnier kid. You will
Never.
never find a funnier child than a neurodivergent kid.
True.
Why are they funnier than me? Why is this sense of
No.
humor quicker than me? And it's the way that we assess children in school, even going to parent teacher conferences. And I'm so blessed that his teacher is very patient because that's all we can ask for with a child with PDA is like, I hope his teacher has patience. But and I've given these assessments. I know how they're given. And in my head being like, but this is just kind of showing me how he was that day. Like,
Yeah,
like,
100%.
this isn't really showing me what he knows. It's just how did he perform for you on this given moment? It's just such a disconnect between these children who think that they can't succeed and all of these things when it's really like, you are so brilliant. Like, babe, like you're just bored. It's not that you can't sit still. Why should you sit still?
Right.
Like I can't sit still. And
No, and we don't have to sit still. Isn't it great that there are people in the world that don't want to sit still? Because I find sitting and watching TV to be tremendously boring. Like,
yes,
I don't wanna do that. Let
I
me
can't
be.
only do that. Like I'll do that and maybe
Mhm.
knit or I can do that
Yeah,
in color, but like and
100%.
I remember like myself like I would suck on my arm because I was so bored and then I get in trouble for that. And then, like
Yeah,
we would
that is
doodle,
cool.
get
Oh
in
my
trouble
god.
for that. So it's just like,
Yes.
oh man, let's normalize regulation. And if we can normalize nervous system regulation, then we can actually get into the learning and then we can get into the getting
No.
to know our students. Since we've spoken a little bit about your daughter,
Yeah,
sounds like I'm obsessed with her, do you mind if we kind of go into her story? Because you had shared that talking about with your daughter about her assessment results.
yeah,
And there's so many parents who are listening, kind of thinking about walking into that.
yes,
It's a scary
it is.
situation to walk into, especially if you haven't already been in the school system, you don't know what to expect. How would you walk us through like what that mom part of you feels like and looks like when you walk through that diagnosis?
Yeah, I remember the first time that somebody even brought up sensory processing disorder and, listening to a podcast on it. And, that wasn't something we were taught about in school. That wasn't a thing.
No.
And even, our pediatrician knew nothing, oh, there's nothing to see here. You're just a bad parent. And then, we like, oh, so many people. And we had been through provider after provider who just wanted to tell me what a terrible, well-informed parent I was. And meanwhile, I'm reading like every book. I'm hiring every professional, like
You're like
paying.
telling him stuff like, did you consider this?
I'm just like, "You know what I do for a living?" Who whatever. So it just went on and on and on, but there was this podcast and it was like which is why I just so love the idea of podcasts, but there was this moment where it was called The Longest Shortest Time, which was like a big podcast at the time about parenting, and this woman was like describing my kid. She was like, "Oh, she wouldn't go outside, she wouldn't put clothes on, we couldn't leave the house for a month because she couldn't wear clothes and everything was such a big deal." And I just like sobbed in my car, just sobbed in my car. And I was like, oh my God, like, hold on. Like, no one
You
has
too?
ever said that. Yeah. Like, just so then we finally found an occupational therapist who diagnosed her with that. And we got some help and some relief there. And she was like, really interesting that everyone's turned you away because your kiddo is off the chart on every single one of these measures. And, there were just like observable things that were not up for subjective discussion, which was cool. But long story short, we ended up, I mean, countless providers to finally get answers, which is like almost embarrassing to me because it's like why doctors don't, like operate on their kids because I was blind to so many things. Like my kid was outgoing and hilarious and spontaneous and wild at home. And at school, she was very different. And she was masking. I mean, she was masking her face off, but I really didn't see anything socially that was concerning to me. And I mean, most of the time, I still don't. I mean, she does not have like social quote unquote concerns. She's like
Yeah.
very outgoing and lovely. And then when she's done, she's done. But we were accommodating her without even knowing we were accommodating her. So, like, I wasn't forcing her into social situations that were awful for her. School was, you know? And
Yes.
so it was like when the social piece came up, I'm like, she's fine. What do you mean? Like a lot of parents, it's like, we're
Yeah.
looking for what we've heard about on TV, but I was looking for what I saw with boys, and that was not it. And
Mhm.
honestly, looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't say that I had social stuff going on until I realized that it was like nuanced social stuff. So
Yes.
anyway, it was terrifying. And then we got the results and they finally came back and said, like, oh my gosh, absolutely. Like she meets all of the criteria for what it looks like in girls. But before she was, autistic finally, we were told she was depressed, which she wasn't. We were told she was
Really?
every other thing, like,
Yeah.
she was anxious, she had depression, she had all these things and none of that fit. So by the time we finally understood that it was autism, I was like, "Oh, finally." Like, okay, now this makes sense. And then when I started, learning more, it was better. So basically, when we were getting close to finding the results out, I really thought long and hard about how I wanted to tell her because I know that this is a very big deal to me professionally. And, I felt very protective over, who got to define this and, what it looked like. So anyway, when we were finally about to get the results, I really thought long and hard about what I wanted to tell her and how I wanted to tell her. And, this was the time when, everything was puzzle piece this and, Autism Speaks was very big and people were talking about that sort of, I don't know, that sort of world of autism. And I felt very strongly that I wanted to approach this differently, which wasn't really a thing anybody was doing at that time. So we reached out to basically everybody that my kid had a relationship with. And I sent them like an email that was very personal and just asked them to please like keep this between us, but that, we were seeking out an assessment and we were kind of thinking that it was probably going to go the way of neurodivergence and that we really wanted to celebrate her in finding this out. And instead of, telling her this is your diagnosis, we wanted to frame it as, hey, we really understand this awesome thing about your brain. And this is going to be so cool for us to get this information. And so every person that loved her sent a video to me and we put it all together. I still get goosebumps talking about it. And we even had like video of her dog that we kind of like made talk. And we had videos of other dogs that she loved and we made them talk in the video. So she, on the day that we found out for sure, and we told her the next day, we sat her down and my mom gave her like this beautiful little like piece of jewelry, and it was like, this is you and you're a shining star and we understand you and this is a really important day for you. So she sat down and she watched the video and I have the picture. It's like the most beautiful picture. I will like
Oh,
never love a picture more than this. But she sat down and she watched this video and her eyes just like lit up like a Christmas tree. And imagine having every person that you love in this world be like,
oh
"Hey."
my
And
gosh.
so they all were like, "Hey, we heard the great news. This is so exciting." And one of my friends who is a teacher was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Temple Grandin? Here's her book. She has the same kind of brain as you, and she wrote a kid's book, and I'm going to send this to you." And people talked about their dogs and how they've never seen anybody love a dog as much as her, and that's such a cool part of her brain. And everybody just talked about her, and it was probably like a 15-minute video. And at the end, she was just like, "This is great," and I'm like, "I
Oh,
know, right? Best day ever." Oh, it was great. It was just great. And she honestly, like, she never really had to go through that moment of like, is this negative? Is this something to be ashamed of? Is this something to be afraid of? Because we talked about it and we were open
yeah.
about it, the good, the bad, and it was just so different than I think what any of us grew up with because none of us even knew. But
Yeah.
she, to this day, I mean, she's about to be 15 and she, I think she would tell you that like being autistic is the least interesting thing about her at this point. Like she's
What's that?
just so whatever to her. And
Oh
she
my
has a lot
gosh.
of other neurodivergent friends. And she's like, oh, they don't know. We'll just let them find out on their own time. But she's just so tuned in. And she likes herself. And I really like, I don't know what sort of came over me in that moment because that wasn't a thing that people were talking about like that at the time. But it felt critical to me that she didn't see this as something to fear or be
Can
worried about
we
or
can we
thinking.
bravo for mom? Bravo. Like normalize that. Can we normalize like getting your diagnosis parties, that is the most beautiful thing. How validating.
Right.
Instead of it like, because you're right, we do almost frame this knowledge of like, this is your brain and now you know exactly what it needs and how
Yeah.
to accommodate it as a negative thing,
Yes.
instead of this huge like, we did it. We know
Yes.
exactly how to love
Get
you
it.
and support
Yeah.
you. Oh my gosh, I thought I was obsessed with you before, but oh my god, that is such a beautiful way to come into yourself.
It was, it was awesome. And like, and I don't mean to like sugarcoat because I by no means ever want to diminish her struggles. Like she has really had a tough time when it has come to schooling and change and, divorce. And I mean, there were so many things that went on in her life that were really hard, and hard in a way that is not mainstream hard, hard in a way that other kids around her were not struggling. And that you can't take that part out of the story either. I don't go the route of the like, superpower thing. Like it just doesn't feel right to me to like sugarcoat, the full picture.
Mhm.
But I do think, she's really okay with who she is. And
Yeah.
that like what more could you want, because
Yeah.
she never doubted, is this weird? Is this something that we're not supposed to talk about? Like it was just always there.
Yeah. And there is so much hardship that comes with being neurodivergent in a world that's just not set up for us. Why
Yes.
should having the knowledge of being neurodivergent be a hardship? Like
Yeah.
that's the good part. That's the okay,
Yeah.
we know how to protect you now. And I mean, I wish I would have thought to make it so beautiful for my kiddos. For me and my kiddos are little. I have he's just turning 9 this week and then a 5-year-old. And it just was kind of folded into the conversation always. Like mommy was always a teacher. So I would just, why do you have a trampoline in your classroom? Oh, I have a lot of kids who have ADHD. They have a lot of energy they need to get out. It was just kind of like a normal thing. And so that my little one, when he is, when he still struggles with like, I was bad at school today. I'm trying to shift that language to,
Yeah.
you ran out of energy, or like you were having big feelings, you couldn't regulate. And now we're halfway through the year, and, he's able to tell me like, Mom, I started missing you and I lost control of my body. It went from already at the he got kicked out of preschools and we were told that we use his autism as a crutch. And, at 4 years old, he was coming to
Oh,
me saying, my brain is broken. My brain is bad. It makes me bad. And, it took me a year to like get into a 4-year-old brain. Why is a 4-year-old child thinking that about himself? I would see the same thing in my classroom. Why is it when I take this little TK and I spend a year teaching him how to advocate, like, I don't like looking at making eye contact, but I'm listening to you. And kids can use that type of affirming language, but
yeah.
then they would leave my classroom and I would see them outside their classroom because they couldn't use those tools. And so to
Mhm.
have a mom and a support system at home to consistently reinforce, it's not you. It's not
Yes.
you. It's not you.
Yes.
Like, I think that our kids are going to change the world because of it.
I think so too. And I look at her, and I was just talking to somebody about this today. We were in the car the other day and she had just worked a really long shift at the SBCA and she had a really busy day. And we're driving home and she's kind of like a little checked out. And I'm doing the thing that moms do. And I'm asking questions. How was your day? How was this guinea pig? And what's going on with that dog? The whole thing. She answered the questions, and then she goes, "Hey, mom." She was like, "Can I just say something?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" And she's like, "I am just, like, really flat right now." She's like, "I had to people a lot today." And she goes, "Would it hurt your feelings if I just didn't talk for a few minutes? Because I just, like, it feels like a lot." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, no." Like, and thank you for saying that. And also, "Do you want me to turn off the music? Is that too?" And she goes, "No, the music is just right. I just didn't want you to get your feelings hurt because I wasn't talking to you." And I was like, "Is this the kid that used to punch me in the face? Like, is this the kid that used to dump every toy on the floor and just, like,
Yes.
have meltdowns for 4 or 5 hours because school was hard?" I mean, it's mind-blowing to see, and you know why that kid is the same kid? Because that kid is accommodated, and instead
Mhm.
of doing whatever it is that teenagers do at her age, she's at the SPCA, she's working a job, I mean, the things that she does are hers, and so
Yes.
it's like it exhausts her and it also lights her up like a Christmas tree. And it's just a beautiful thing to see what accommodations and a life built around her can look like, even through the struggles, and there have been many. But
Yeah.
she's aware, she knows who she is. And I love that she's not like apologizing for it. She's just
Mhm.
like, I'm just letting you know so you don't get your feelings
Yeah.
hurt.
I need
Perfect.
to go quiet. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
dude, I want to go mute
check
sometimes
out.
too. That's so I'm sure you talk to her about masking then, because if she's able to be like, I had to people a lot today, which I'm going to steal that from her, go ahead and let her know,
Yes.
like, oh, I people too hard. So when you talk about masking, which I'm obsessed with this part of your work because I am actively learning how to unmask and having to also recognize that I kind of taught my oldest to mask a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to now walk that back and take out the people pleasing that I instilled in him. So when you are running these unmasking masking retreats and neurodivergent adventure program, which is something most people have never seen offered before, what inspired you to like focus on unmasking, and how did you know that that was a need? How did you even come up with this idea? I love it.
In the shower, naturally.
Of course.
So it's every once in a while that impulsivity really like helps out, but yeah, not always. I went to a retreat a couple years ago and it was so funny because this was right after, like pretty soon after my own assessment. And it was a writing retreat. So I had this book idea and I was really eager to get started, but feeling pretty paralyzed. So I went to this retreat and it was across the country in California because I'm on the East Coast. And I spent 4 or 5 days with a group of people. And it was the first time I stood up and I said, I read something I wrote for my book and just like announced to the room that I was autistic. And the writing that I did was about that. And I think it was actually easier for me to do that with a room full of strangers across the country than it was in my own house or my own family. So I felt this very strong. I used to be a photographer and I used to go to photography retreats. And I just feel like retreats are this place where you get to go be a person you're not or you're not yet and try it
Mm.
on and kind of play around with what it feels like to not be the version of you that's at home. And so I've had that experience a few times, but totally different retreats. I mean, none of them, one was like for women photographers and this one was for writers and some were just for wedding photographers. And it's just like they've all been really different. But there's something that happens there that's really powerful, and I think it almost to me this is gonna be the weirdest parallel I make, but it almost feels like an affair with yourself, like, you
Mhm.
leave yourself at home and you go become this, like, new fun person
Put
who,
this
like
skin on, like, how does this
yes!
feel?
You're like, "Oh, I'm fun and adventurous, and I have things to say, and I'm not afraid to say them, and what kids? I don't have kids." So you go and you just, like, try this on, and I did, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm an autistic writer, that's what I am." And it was like it felt like total BS. I was like, "This isn't real. I want this to be real, but, like, let's
Yeah.
try it." And then I came home and I'm, like, in the shower, and my husband's getting ready for work, and I'm just, like, talking to him, and I'm like, we could do this. Why am I not doing this? I should have a retreat. And, he's like, well, logistics, like, well, I mean, that's going to be expensive. How would we do that? And he's asking all the like, husband questions. But then I'm, no, but wait, like, what if we did this unmasking thing where like people come in and you get to like actually become that version of yourself? Like, try taking the mask off and just be around other autistic people and be in nature and just like connect.
Mhm.
And he was like, this is genius. Well, 36 hours later, it was planned and booked.
36.
And I was like, "Well, if you build it, they will come." So, it was insane, like most of the things that I do, because I just get an idea and I'm like, "If I don't act on it right now, it's not gonna
Yeah,
happen."
or
So
I'll
I did.
forget.
Yeah. I put a ridiculous deposit down on this ridiculous house, and I was like, "People will come." So, of
And they
course, like,
came.
they did,
They
and I
came.
and I'm like, at this point, like, I'm like, "No one knows who I am." Like, I'm not, like, out here killing it, like, with this huge following, like, I'm just a therapist that works with autistic people. So, I mention it and, word gets around and we fill it, and I have no idea what to expect. I'm like, people are gonna leave, people are gonna riot. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's gonna be like, I
Riot.
don't know. You just don't know. I mean, let's be honest, like, autistic people don't wanna go to a house with people they don't know. Like,
Yeah, we're
I
asking a lot of them to show up.
yes, yeah, I mean,
But
that was my fear is that they're all gonna book it and then no one shows, and I'm, like, unmasking by myself. So they did show, and, it was great. So we had this, like, house on this beautiful property and this other little tiny house next to it, and I, left no detail uncovered. Like, I was like, "Listen, we will make sure your bathrooms are private. We will make sure that you can be alone. We will make sure you can have downtime. Walk out. Just you don't wanna talk about something, just leave. Like, bring your
yes.
blankets, bring your whatever." So it was 3 or 4 days, and it was probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire life. Like, I don't know what happened. I can't explain any of it, but it was just beautiful. And I had this moment where I was like, okay, so we've got something here. This is
Yeah.
amazing. And what really happened was it was nothing that I did. It wasn't like, oh, I had this great content. No, it had nothing to do with me. It was like this house. was safe and
Yes.
their food needs were accommodated. We had like 12 different kinds of milk for coffee. I mean, it was like the
Perfect.
foods were, everyone's allergic to everything. And we're like, no, no, we got this. My husband's like cooking in the kitchen. So,
Wow.
but what was beautiful is that we were all just, myself included, we were able to just be like our real selves for 4 days. And just watching people, like just nerd out about the things that matter
Mhm.
to them. Like somebody got up and gave a presentation on like the spreadsheet thing that they have like a dashboard for their family that they use and like how they keep it all together. And I was like, you, that is
Yes.
that is
That's
amazing,
gorgeous.
And then like someone sharing their art and I'm just like, tell me how do you do that? So it was beautiful, and we came home, and I was just devastated afterwards. I was, like, going back to my real life. I was like, "No, I
Mm.
wanna be her." Like, I wanna be the
Mhm.
person in the house with the autistic people, and so we were like, "We have to plan another one." So the second one, happened, and I think the coolest thing was the first one I was just totally convinced was a fluke. But the second one, we get there and we have an even bigger house and more people. And I'm like, I have been planning content for months and we're going to, blow the last one out of the water. So within 5 minutes of being there, I feel like this sums up the whole thing. We're sitting at the counter and I'm just getting everybody, their welcome drinks. And someone comes up and they're like, did you know that the, national puzzle championship was in DC last week? And someone else comes up, they're like, oh my God, do you jigsaw? And she's like, yeah, I jigsaw. And then within like a minute of us all arriving, like everyone's gathered around talking about like a puzzle competition that I didn't even know was a real thing. And then, it's like we're talking about weather forecasting or using the European model or the American model. And then it's, books we're reading, podcasts we're listening to. And it was seconds. I mean, it was just seconds into the retreat. And I was watching all these people. Some of them were my clients and some of them I knew outside of work. And I'm watching them and I'm like, oh yeah, you have no friends, right? Okay, sure. Oh yeah, you
Mhm.
don't like people, right? You don't get along with people. Oh, it's hard. No,
Socializing's
that's
hard for
fine. Yeah,
you? Mm,
socializing's hard. Not when we talk about jigsaw puzzles, it's not.
yeah.
And so within, an hour, like everyone's besties, everyone's talking fast. There was someone there who talks just like me, and I'm watching her
Yes.
going, "Oh, you're a like you're great." Like I was just so cool. And then some people are sort of sitting on the outside, they taking it all in, and that was fine. Like it's just beautiful. So we have
Well, I wanna
continued.
jump in because you
Yeah,
said you didn't create anything, and I wanna say, excuse me, no, let's go ahead and acknowledge the fact that you did the most important thing, which was create the space. We don't have spaces to be ourselves. We don't often have spaces where we're given the space to freak out over puzzles, and then
yes,
given the grace to speak in the speed that we wanna talk in. So far you haven't gotten too annoyed with me interrupting,
way.
like
I need
there
that.
and
I need that.
how else do I know you're listening if you're not
Right?
interrupting me every 2 seconds? Like the
100%.
the joy that it feels like to just be able to speak in your circle. Like, listen, we're going to hit
Yes,
topics A, B, C, D, F.
yes.
Follow me on this train. We'll get
Follow
back
me. We'll get
around.
there. Yeah.
Oh, like it feeds my soul. Like I walk away from those moments where I'm just like, oh, I didn't have to slow down. You created that space where people felt free enough to show who they are. And in some places, like we never experienced that space. And
No.
you made that happen. That's the biggest part of it is you created the
So
safe space.
cool. It's interesting though. I don't, and I wrote this whole big thing that I start all the retreats with, and I tell the story. I'm like, listen, like I had this idea that I could do this better, and so I did. And here's what we're gonna do. And the retreat that I went to that kind of inspired me is with a therapist, Tammy Nelson, who I'm just obsessed with, and I think she's brilliant. And I remember at the beginning of her retreat, she said, "Hey, I just want to tell you something. Like this is going to be a brave space, not a safe space, because being brave is where you grow." And I had this visceral reaction. I was like, I'm out of here. Like I was like, what led to this retreat is me wanting to leave a regular retreat. That was lovely. And I had the best time and I'm so glad I stayed. But it was like I had to push myself to get to what was comfortable. So I say at the beginning of mine, I'm like, that didn't sit well with me because I recognize how hard it is to get all you guys in this house. And this is going to be a brave space and a safe space. So
Mhm.
if you want to like get out of here and walk out of this, like go. Like if you want to walk outside and get some air, if you want to put your headphones on and tune out, you want to go play pool by yourself, knock yourself out. And they
Well, and the
do. And
way the way we
hey,
need that explicit permission, exactly.
yeah,
Like I would feel rude if I was overwhelmed and left. But you
yep,
laid out the
yeah,
exact permissions. Like you are allowed to be in the bathroom and take space if you need to.
yes,
Like sometimes we need to hear that and or see it modeled. Like, I'm
Yes.
sure you were also modeling kind of
Oh,
what that looks like, and
yes.
I've even noticed you have a little fidget with you,
Oh,
I have a little fidget, and, I think a lot of us who were very high masking, especially if we're high verbal, especially
yeah,
if we're highly intelligent,
yeah,
we masked so well, we don't know what it means to take it off. And,
true.
sometimes we just need like, what does that look like? And sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to fidget while I talk to you. I'm trying to allow myself to unmask even on my podcast. Like, and then I'll look back and I'm like, ew, I was looking up the whole time. But it's like, normalize that, normalize that. And
Right?
so, can you give me us a little example of one way if we can't attend and we can't see what that looks like? What would be like one little tip? Like, this is what it means to take off the mask.
Yeah. Well, I think to me, I can't think of unmasking without thinking about community. Like, I think when you surround yourself with other people, that like it is so easy for me to talk to you. Like, you are like immediately as soon as we came in, it's just like so easy. And I think that's what ends up happening with
Uh-huh.
neurodivergent people that meet other neurodivergent people. So I think you have to almost feel that where it's easy before you can work on it where it's hard. So to me, I'm
Okay.
like, it's not shocking to me that I met my husband and like we immediately were like hitting it off and like kind of vibrating on the same frequency for lack of any other better way to put it. Like it just felt really easy. And he's not like a fast talker or anything like that, but there was like a cadence to our relationship immediately. Like I just felt that comfortable feeling. And I feel that same, not like in a romantic way, but like in when we do these retreats, when we do a meetup, anything, I feel that every time I'm with another autistic person, like almost without fail. It's just it's comfortable. And so
Okay.
when somebody lets you know that they're like in it with you in conversation, in interests and whatever, I think you suddenly go, okay, like this isn't awful actually.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't feel like a bad first date. This feels like me wanting to get to know someone. So I always tell people like find other autistic people first and like practice there because with me, like I'm not apologizing all over myself with anybody I know that's neurodivergent. Like they know they can interrupt me. They know they can tell me I've gone too far. Or, like we're really comfortable being like, hey, okay, chill. That's
Like,
enough of
I
that.
don't like that.
Yeah, like, we're not going there today. But when I get that feeling with somebody else, I'm like, "Oh, that's me, actually." Like, and I think that's why I do this work because it doesn't actually feel like work for me. I'm like, every hour is a new person and a
Yeah.
new place that feels like home to me. We're talking about topics that feel very real to me. And it's
Yes.
not about me and somebody else's therapy, but I actually feel very comfortable like sitting in other people's discomfort, sitting in the same challenges. So once you get a taste of like, you know what, you can show up authentically like you,
Yeah.
you know what that is when you kinda have to channel it in harder situations. So, it might be not, being over the top bubbly. It may be being flat after a long day or
Yeah.
not saying anything at a social gathering that doesn't interest me. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
things where I show up and I look very, very different, but I feel so much better about that now when I know what it is. It's like before it
Yeah.
felt like failing and now it doesn't.
So it's I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from that is really the first step is getting to know your own nervous system so that you can feel if you can it's almost like you're seeing your nervous systems are aligning and your nervous system is recognizing like this person I can be myself with like but you have to know what that safety feels like first. Is
Yes.
that right?
100%. And how many people do you think really know what that feels like? Like, I feel that with my kid because we created that together. I mean,
Yes.
our neurodivergences look very different, but
Yeah.
we are able to overlap in ways, if we're sitting on the couch, like her legs are on top of me and she's doing her own thing, like just, completely snuggled up
Having
with
to
me.
touch, like, one toe
Yes.
has to touch at all times.
Yeah.
Are you here? Are you like, are we connected? Are we present
Yes.
together?
Yeah, or she's across the house and we're not talking at all, and, like, that is totally okay. So I don't worry about that, like, if she goes to her
Okay.
room for a whole weekend, I'm not like, "Oh god, what's wrong with her?" I'm like, "No, that's what she needs," and I just, signs of life check. But
Yeah.
it's, like, those types of things, like, I
Signs of
know
life
what that
check. I just
you
I
know?
just registered.
Like, that is
That's
important.
funny.
before, like, there's a comfort there, and then there became a comfort like that with my husband, there's a comfort like
Yeah.
that with my friends. So, if you've ever noticed yourself saying like, "Oh, this friend, like, I don't have to perform when they come over," or, "I don't feel like I have to be on when I'm with this person," you're unmasked. Like, to whatever degree it is with that person, you have to feel that before you can create more of that, and I'm
Yeah.
out here chasing that. I want that everywhere. I want it in workplaces, I want
Yes.
it everywhere.
Well, and I think you've just kind of switched the way that I perceive unmasking because it was always like, I have to stop doing all this stuff. I have to stop.
Yeah.
But the way that you're approaching masking is really like, what makes me feel good? Like,
Yeah,
where can
here's
I
the
put
thing.
myself in places and around people that feel good? And then I don't have to pretend. You don't
Yes.
have to put the mask on because it's not necessary. And I think that feels more doable. That feels
Yeah.
more
Yes.
realistic. And
It's just authenticity, right? Like,
yeah. But if
if
you're
you were to
masking your whole life, what does that mean? What does
you don't
authenticity
know.
even mean? Because all of those like signs of like, oh, this feels icky was attributed to us being rude
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
us being judgmental. Or I have a very high sense of social justice. And so I'm just a
Yes.
social justice warrior. I take making everything so dramatic. But then and so for me right now, my solution is to isolate. I'm very
Yeah.
isolated, but I
Yeah.
found that nervous system connection with my children. So it's like, I know it's possible. And you're telling me it's
100%.
possible with other people too.
It
Like
is.
you're telling me that you can have a community like this, is what
Yes.
you're saying.
100%. And also, when people say unmasking, I feel like we have this idea of unmasking in that, like, I think a lot of people hear it and they think being phony. Like, they think like putting
Yes.
on a fake personality. Like, I'm not putting on a fake personality. I'm just playing by the rules of our society. So, like, I don't particularly want to talk about the weather or when I go to the grocery store. I'd much rather talk about the person who's checking me out with my groceries, like what color their hair is and why they wanted it to be that color, and how long they've been working here, and like, how does your family feel about the way that you work? Like,
I'm
I
so
have
inappropriate. I'm like, tell me all about your childhood trauma.
yes,
Let's go.
like, what's
What did your
going on with
parents
you?
do?
We don't care about the snow. Like, the snow is
No.
not interesting. So I think like my idea of unmasking is it actually goes both ways. It's not. I don't think it's like a fake personality. It's sort of like taking off the need to make it this cookie cutter thing, but also it's like the other side, like leaning into, like, if you ask me a question about autism, like, I'm gonna just like, blah, blah, blah. You've seen this. It's been an hour of this. But I'm like motor mouth. Like, I have so many things. I'm lighting up. I'm so excited. I could talk and talk and talk. And that is also me unmasked. Like, and it's
Okay.
very, very over the top and enthusiastic and fast. And it's a lot for people. And I get that. And what I notice is when I'm like that with certain people, you go a certain amount of time and it's cute. And then it gets to the point where they're like, like, and you sort of see them like leaning out. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, we've reached too much. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I
yeah.
didn't know where that line was.
Wrap it up.
But then with other people, when you're with neurodivergent people, they're like leaning in. They're like, "Yeah, really? Did you read this? Have you heard this podcast? Have you
Mhm.
done that?" And it's like they're saying more. And
Mhm.
so I think, like, to me, that's also unmasking. Like, yeah, there's times when
Okay.
I'm flat, don't want to put it on, but there's times when I'm just going and going and going and going and don't want to stop, and someone can handle that. And that's the real me too. So
Yeah.
it's like all of that.
I love so what do people tend to discover about themselves on your retreats? Like what do you notice that is like the one thing that people walk away like cuz you're like I never put that together about unmasking that it is being able to just like unleash yourself out almost.
Yeah.
Like when people leave the retreat, what do you find is like the most common thing that they walk away
Yeah.
being like
It's usually two things. There's nothing wrong with me, like,
oh
being out
yay.
with
You're
people, just like people doing what I'm doing. Like, there is not one thing. I'm not antisocial. I'm not someone who can't make friends. I mean, honestly, by like the second night, it looks like a frat house at this place. I mean, it's like everyone is like, we're playing games, we're like having some wine, we're telling stories, we're laughing. I mean, that's what it's like. But yeah, I mean, we're not talking about the weather.
my
Yeah.
gosh, that's
So
amazing.
that, like, there's nothing wrong with me. And then, I think the other thing is just like noticing how much people have kind of like resisted their own instinct to ask for help. Like we push
Wow.
down our own needs for so many years that we don't even feel them anymore. We don't even know like what do I want? Who am I? What do I need? And so we really push that hard at the retreat. Like my husband is like borderline obsessed with making people comfortable. And he's like, listen, like if you don't like milk that is here for your coffee, like you're gonna tell me. And if you don't want what's for dinner, like and we have everybody writes their meal preferences, and we have like all these systems in place so that people can just get what they need. Do you need a fan? Do you need a space heater?
Yeah.
Do you need a blanket? Do you need to move to a quieter space? And we sort of just like drill that in over and over and over again, like
Yeah.
just do it, just ask for help, say this is too much, say I need to get out of here. And then they do. Like one person
Yeah.
pulled me aside and said like, I feel like I'm having a really hard time jumping in the conversation. And I was like, how can I help you with that? And I thought they wanted me to like tee it up, and they were like, no, like, how do I want to do that more? Like, how do I? And it was like,
Oh,
oh, okay.
that's
Like,
a
let's
totally
talk.
different perspective. I didn't even
Yeah.
consider.
And like,
So,
how do I do that? So those types of things.
so do you feel like maybe you guys are maybe even giving these people for the first time accommodations for the first time of their lives? Like they're
Yeah.
experiencing what it feels like to be accommodated. And that is like
100%.
they're able to like feel what that feels like to then move forward and being like, this is what baseline should be. We're not
Yes.
actually supposed to be so stressed out and hanging on all the
Yes.
time. Because
Yeah.
once
And then
you
they notice
feel
they
that,
can stay in it. Yep.
exactly. Because once you
Yeah.
feel that safety, it's hard to go back.
It is.
It's,
It's
it's,
completely hard to go back.
yeah. And I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't think I want
No.
to.
One of the retreaters that came to the second and the third retreat was the transformation between the second and the third was just the most
Mhm.
overwhelming thing I've ever seen. Like all of a sudden she is just like day one of the last retreat, she's like, I have something to say. I have an example. And I was like, oh, look at you. It was amazing. But she was telling me a story before about how she had gone to a doctor, and it was a doctor that works with autistic clients a lot. And they had said like, do you want me to, put the shades, a great doctor, like, can I put the shades down? Like turn the lights down for you, anything like that. And she's like, I would have said no matter what she said. Like I would have just said,
Ye
no, 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 no. Cause we learned to just power
Yeah,
through.
I'm fine.
And
I'm
she's like,
fine.
fine. And she said after the retreat, like it was the first time it even occurred to me, not only to do it, but that I could do it. That I could be like, yes,
Wow.
there's a problem I'm gonna ask you to fix. And it would not
Yes.
be a huge inconvenience. So I mean, we're in our 40s when we're thinking about that. That's crazy.
Right. To have permission to like turn off the lights.
Yeah. And like that's the thing. I mean, we're not asking for like, fully paid tuition to an Ivy League school. We're asking like, can you turn the lights down? Or
Yeah.
like, would it be okay if I look over here while you're talking? Because I think better that way. Whatever it
Right?
is, none of these things are big asks, these
No.
accommodations. They're really not.
No. I love that so much. And I just am so happy that through you and now and so many other people, we're finally getting these safe spaces to like
Yes.
explore ourselves and like what feels right for our body. And hopefully it will just trickle down to those kiddos. So when they're adults, there is no shame in, oh, I people too hard. I need to take a minute. Or, like I have a party tomorrow. So today I have to keep it really low. And then the day after, I'm going to have a decompression day and just set our lives up for success from the get go, just from the nervous system beginning.
It's going in such a better path. It really
I
is.
think
I mean,
so,
I really think that the future is going to be so different. And really at this point, like we don't know what autism looks like without trauma because every
which
day
is
in this
so
world
sad.
as an autistic
So
person
sad.
is trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, are we even suffering from the autism or is it from the trauma of not being accepted for who we are? We don't even
Yes.
know yet.
Yes. I mean, you can't even ask a doctor a question without being told that you're, oh, that's not you. That's not real. That's not a thing. And it's like, what would it be like if we were just believed, and
Yeah.
all the
Well, and
things?
I try to like explain it to people cuz especially when it's like he just needs to calm down or they just need to do something. I was like you would never tell a person with diabetes he just
Never,
needs to raise his insulin. Just think
never.
about it hard enough and raise your insulin. Like this is what it looks like to be autistic. Maybe I'm not flapping the way that you think I am, but in my mind, I am losing it. And I
Yes,
think I think we're going in the right direction because let's give ourselves a little pat on the back for
yes,
creating these spaces to normalize our experience. Let's normalize the
yes.
neurodivergent experience.
Yes. Well, and this is what's changing. I mean, really, like I will pat all of us on the back because it's like, it is podcasts, it is social media. Like, it is not doctors and professionals that are changing the way that this is going. It is people. It is moms like you. It is like, I mean, it is absolutely, it is school professionals like you. It is people who are out there that are just like, I believe you. Like,
Mhm.
I
And
believe you.
validating it, like, yes, it's
Yeah.
actually the school. It's not your child's
Yep.
school is inherently dysregulating. And telling a child that too, like, okay, it's not that I can't learn, it's just that I hear the fluorescent lights and I hear the heater
They're loud.
and I can't focus. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
pat on us for normalizing this big the half that half of us have, that we don't even talk about.
100%.
Well, I've taken an hour of your time and I don't want to although I could take 7,000 more hours to talk about this.
Anytime.
I just want to open up the floor if you have anything else you want to talk about. I know you have your retreat coming up. So is there anything that you want to promote, and especially let my followers know how they can find you because your content is amazing?
I would love that. Yeah, my website is koryandreas.com, and all the things that I do are on there. So my Instagram is on there. It's at neurocorious, and I have a lot of big things coming up. We do the unmasking retreats right now at least twice a year. We might be doing one in February. We're definitely doing one in May. This is the first time we have people from all over the country. So it was so exciting. So I hope that that continues because it's like my absolute favorite weekend ever. But there's other stuff coming kind of in the next couple months. I'm doing some new online classes to help adults
Mm,
that are like diagnosed unmasked. So there will be some content that can help them through that journey,
yes,
and as well as some professional courses for people that are working in the field, either healthcare or mental health and things like that. And we're just going to continue to do what we do. Like, I put a lot
yes,
out there on Instagram. I'm trying to connect people with these retreats, and if you're local to me, these neurodivergent adventures. But I think community is everything. And let's face it, as autistic people, online community is our favorite community.
yes.
So that is where I'm putting my energy. Most of the things I do are not in person, so it's pretty cool. So I'm leaning into some Substack stuff at the moment
Yes.
and trying to get some books off the ground. But the goal for me is to make everything that I'm doing more accessible to the masses and not just the small amount of people that I can see on my caseload.
I love that.
So it's very cool to see other people doing the same thing. So we are
Yeah.
we are going in a good direction.
I love that, and I'll make sure to put everything on my show notes so they have the spelling right and they can find you right away because, yes, the community is so important, and I'm just so glad that I was able to find you and I was able to
Yes,
talk to you. I'm so glad because I
thank
really
you.
think that I think you're changing the world, to be honest, and I think our world is going to be a kinder, softer place to live in because of the knowledge that you're spreading.
Right back at you. And I have so much respect for people that are like making the change their own. We
Mhm,
talk a lot about like the political stuff, and we talk a lot about getting out there and advocacy. And like, for a lot of people, like, advocacy is social media, it's
mhm.
podcasts, it's talking to other people. Like, advocacy has no limits in terms of like where we reach people. And I
Yes.
actually think this is the mode, like, even podcasts are the most important piece of advocacy because we hear other people and go, that's me, like, that's exactly it. So
Yeah.
thank you to you for all of the work you're doing. It's a magical thing that you're
Oh.
providing.
Oh, thank you. Our voices matter. Our voices matter. Our nuance is important. And so, yes, thank you for being here. And I'll make sure that all the show notes are in the bottom. And just, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Kory, this conversation was incredible. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your stories, your vulnerability, and your joy with all of us today. For everyone listening, please go follow Kory on Instagram. I will make sure all of it is in the show notes so you can easily find her, so you can check out her retreats, her courses, and all the beautiful work that she's doing. As always, if you loved today's conversation, it would mean the world if you subscribed, shared this episode with a friend, or leave a review. I'll see you next week, friends. Take care of yourself and your nervous systems. Ta ta!